These are the moments that God moves and leaves us saying, wow, God.
True stories
that make us say,
wow, God.
wow, God.
Wow, God.
And I knew in that moment that what God was telling us both was, let's do this for him for free. And so the journey began.
God would not do something so big and so drastic in my life if he didn't have something for me at the end of it.
These dogs are truly gifts from God.
Hi, I'm Melony McKay, guest host for this episode of Wow God Stories. It's part 2 as we continue to explore and see those wow God moments that he creates through his creation. Animals. One of the first things God did was move on the earth and create the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the animals. And he still moves through them today for these wow God stories. We start today with Tina Zimmerman's story. Tina, who has helped many in life through her service dog training, but in one moment in particular, how God moved to help her make a perfect match.
My name is Tina Zimmerman, and I'm the owner of Mainstream Training, and also I founded an organization called U.S. Honor Dogs. I train service dogs professionally, and in U.S. Honor Dogs, we train and donate service dogs to people who have served either in the military or in the police or as firefighters and were somehow injured in the line of duty. Back in 2020, my husband was at work. He had a Christian radio station playing and heard the song Say I Won't by Mercy Me. And the person who was on the radio said, if you haven't seen the video to this song, you need to go to YouTube and watch it. And so he did. And of course, as soon as he saw it, he told me to watch it. The video starts with a gentleman named Gary Miracle, and he rolls out in a wheelchair and he is missing all 4 limbs. And the song is about him being told he was not going to live. His family was called in because he was going to die. And they said he would never walk again. But when you tell him you're not going to do something, it's say I won't live, say I won't walk, say I won't run, say I won't fly. It's such a beautiful video, but I wasn't quite sure what was the cause of him losing his limbs. And because of the work I do, of course, I thought, if this man lost his limbs due to serving our country, I would love to donate a dog for him. And so I emailed him and I said, I didn't know if you would be interested in a service dog. If you by any chance served in the military, we would donate one for you for free. And immediately I got an email back and he said, I absolutely need a service dog. I've contacted several organizations, but they are well over $30,000 to even start for the type of needs that I have. And no, unfortunately, I'm not a veteran. And then my husband came home from work and I told him that I was kind of sad that he wasn't a veteran because I would have really liked to have trained and donated a dog. And he just gave me that look. And I knew in that moment that what God was telling us both was, let's do this for him for free from our personal business. And so the journey began. We do not breed dogs. We do not buy dogs. We rescue dogs. And when you think of a rescue dog, you think of a 3-legged, mangy, one-eyed dog limping down the street. But the truth is, so many people will buy a really good-looking breed of dog that they've seen on YouTube or seen videos of and think, oh, I want that dog, having no idea that they're bred to do a job and just being in a family home isn't enough for them. And so we actually started to network with different rescues trying to find the perfect dog for Gary. And I was contacted about what they call a bi-black German Shepherd, whose mother was actually bred and imported here from Germany. And she was of lines of dogs that are used in police work, used for search and rescue. And so this dog was bred to work. But unfortunately, He was sold to a home that just wanted a dog, just wanted a pretty pet to have in the yard. And that did not go good. He was just too much for them. And so they sold him to a breeder who knew his bloodlines and wanted to use him in their breeding program, but found out after they had purchased him that he had some little genetic issue that they could not use him for breeding. So once again, he found himself without a home. And so I drove about an hour and a half. And as soon as I saw the look in his eye, he was just bright, ready to go. And you could just tell he was very confused, but whatever was in front of him, he was ready for it. We loaded him in the car and we started to drive home, and he was very anxious. He was bouncing back and forth from window to window and panting really hard and just very concerned about, now where are we going? And that made me anxious. I kind of thought, oh, what have I done here? And so we turn on the radio station. And the very first song that came on the radio was Say I Won't by Mercy Me. And so it was kind of just a little wink from God saying, I've got you on this. You're going to do good things with this dog. And so we took him home. We called Gary. We said, I think I have the dog that's going to be your service dog. Do you have any idea what you want to name him? So he sent a text out to the group of Mercy Me, and they all came back with different suggestions. But the most obvious name was ECMO, because that is the machine that saved Gary's life. And so he said, this dog is going to do the same thing for me. I want to call him ECMO. And so we started the process with ECMO, just a lot of things in the beginning of introducing them to riding on elevators, going in a restaurant and laying under the table. And ECMO just excelled in everything we did. If you think about how many times a day you drop things, imagine a person that doesn't have hands, how often they drop things, and then how do they pick them up? There's so many issues. And so Gary expressed that that was a big need for him, that this dog be able to pick things up. You want the dog to pick it up very gently, and then he has to bring it and precisely put it in your lap so that you can have it back. Being a large German Shepherd, he was a little strong picking things up and cracked a few phone cases in the beginning, but he learned, and he got so gentle and so precise that you could literally drop a credit card or a sheet of paper and he could pick it up and bring it back to you. Another service that he learned to do was notify a family member if Gary had fallen on the floor or was down or was having some type of episode. We trained him to go get a family member and do a certain type of bark that would tell him that he needed to help. Then his bloodline of doing search and rescue came in handy because we taught him to track things. So if Gary, say he put his phone down in the kitchen and then went and took a shower and for some reason needed to call 911, we could send ECMO to go find the phone and bring the phone, not just pick it up, but go find it and search it out through the house. His other task was just to brace so that if Gary needed to lean on him, going from his chair to the bed or whatever, that he could lean on him. And all those tasks take quite a while to train. And at that stage in Gary's life, he was 100% in a wheelchair. And so after we had kind of gotten a good foundation of training, ECMO and I flew down to Florida, and we spent a week living with Gary and just experiencing his doctor's appointments and where he likes to go to eat and where he takes his kids for soccer and all the things that he would experience in his life, things that I may not have thought of in my life, I got to see firsthand in Florida. After living with him for a week, we came back home. We did more training on specific tasks, how to get in and out of a van that has a ramp. There's just a lot of things that we had to train him for. Finally, the day came that we felt like he was ready to go to Gary. So we spent another week or so with him, teaching him now how to handle ECMO. Handling a dog from a wheelchair puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage strength-wise because you're not standing up. So we really had to train ECMO to walk gently beside the wheelchair. And then the day came where we very tearfully said goodbye and sent them on their way. But about 4 weeks later, Gary called and he said, "Hey, I am getting my prosthetic legs. I'm going to be learning to walk. I want to learn to walk with my dog, and I'm going to be running in a race. And I want my dog to be able to go with me." And so, again, we flew down to Florida, got to see some of Gary's first steps, teaching the dog how to stay out from under his feet, even to be comfortable with the prosthetic legs. So we constantly got pictures and updates from Gary of how ECMO was helping him pick up things. He'd even help Gary get dressed, pick up anything he dropped, and was just there for every aspect of his life. And if you've ever met Gary or talked to him, he's a very positive, outgoing, upbeat, likes to laugh, always says something sarcastic kind of guy. But we live in a world that was built for people with arms and legs. And there is a very dark and lonely side to living with a disability. Having a house full of people and children and things going all the time, everything looked perfect on the outside, but there's another side to it where navigating life is just hard. And no matter how strong you are, no matter how much you've overcome, life is hard. And during every minute of that process, ECMO was there. And it became so much more than just a dog that mitigates disability. There became a bond and a friendship that only a dog can provide. And I've worked with animals my whole life, so many different species of animals, whether it be on the farm or in Africa or in wildlife rehab, but there's something special about a dog. They don't judge you whether you have 2 legs and 2 arms. They don't care how tall you are, how heavy you are, how much money you have. They are just loyal and faithful and committed to you 100%. I think I can tell you that the most updates I've gotten from Gary have been how much it has meant for him to have ECMO by his side during this entire journey, whether it's the good days, the strong days, the say I won't days, or the lonely days. ECMO is always there for him. And sometimes I think that maybe God gave us dogs to teach us how to be a friend like that.
Learning to be a friend like that. One that is forever faithful, loyal, committed, doesn't judge. Animals leave us with these wow God moments. And you've heard about ECMO and how he came to be a partner with Gary. But what if we heard a little bit more about Gary's story?
It was mid-December, late December. One thing led to another, and I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And that landed me in the hospital on New Year's Eve. And eventually I was airlifted from one hospital to another, and I fell into septic shock. I was in a coma for 10 days. And through that, it was just fighting for my life on a whole bunch of different machines. People have looked forward to talking to me when all this was said and done about when I was in the coma as to what I saw. What I do remember is having nightmares. I was having these very vicious, vivid nightmares. And I think it was a side effect to the medication that I was on. But the nightmares were all the same. And I remember 2 of them specifically. And in both of them, they consisted around me being trapped inside of something. Watching life happen, watching life go on through a mirror, a glass window, essentially. Screaming at the top of my lungs for people to see me or find me. And they never could. And I remember so specifically that I tried to kill myself in my nightmare just to get out of it because I didn't want to be in that. Those nightmares were just awful, of being stuck somewhere and screaming for help and screaming for somebody to get me, and I couldn't get out of it. Hours and hours. So I remember waking up from the coma, and I have memories of being in the ICU room. It was this very tiny, cold room, no windows, because I was still on a ton of medicine. I started hallucinating. seeing things and hearing things that just weren't there. And so much so, I was so convinced that one moment that I saw my dog was in the hospital. My dog was sitting in the chair next to me. I'm like, he's right here, hanging out with me. Come to find out, but that very night, Bones, our dog, passed away. I believe that he came to say goodbye to me. All that to say, I couldn't talk for the longest time. I had to mouth all of my words and hope that people understood me. But I was alive. I didn't know, I wasn't a part of all the initial conversations being in the coma that I might lose my hands and feet. At that time, my extremities were so necrotic that had they done the amputations right then, which the vascular surgeons wanted to do just to be done with it, had they done them right then, my upper extremity amputations would have both been above my elbows and my lower extremities would have both been above my knees. People with above the knee amputations have a very difficult time finding their balance. There would have been a very good chance that I would have never been able to attempt to walk. I just had such a peace about it. It just made sense to me that that was going to happen. There's a verse in Job that said, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. And I truly believed at that moment that it was just taking away time in my life. And it was time for Christ to take that from me. So whatever, that verse ends with, blessed be the name of the Lord. And okay. This conversation could have very easily gone the route of, hey, we don't think we're going to be able to save one of your hands. We're going to have to amputate a hand. God could have easily taken one thing from me, but he didn't. He took it all. He took everything. And I know in my heart, and I knew it in that conversation, that God would not do something so big and so drastic in my life if he didn't have something for me at the end of it.
Wow, God. Hearing Gary's story, that can be the only response. I'm Melony McKay, guest host for this episode. In Proverbs, it tells us to trust in the Lord with all of our heart, to lean not on our own understanding. Gary fully knew that because there's something about God meeting us in those moments of our life. We can see God in his creation. We can see God through his creation. We can see God with his creation. Our next story is Keith Stevens sitting down with Leanna Crawford, and they share about tender times meeting with God as she sat on her horse. Keith hosts the podcast, I Love That Song. It's part of the Wow God Podcast Network. He talks with all your favorite Christian artists to get the story behind the song.
Is it true that you would ride your horse through the woods and talk to God? And what was that like?
Oh, yes. We had all kinds of trails, and my first job growing up was taking care of the horses, and we had people boarding, so they would board their horses at our farm. So my first job growing up was cleaning out stalls, cleaning out the manure that no one wants to do, but that is actually very therapeutic, and I would definitely talk to God while doing that. But riding through the woods for sure, which sounds so I feel like sounds so magical, but it really was just hop on my horse and go for a ride. I spent a lot of time just talking to God outside in the woods and just me on my horse, and just really sweet hearing the birds singing and just a place to go be alone and with my horse, but alone with God.
It reminds me of Romans 1:20, where it says that since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities have been clearly seen, and we can see his creation. So it says that people are without excuse, actually, for not knowing there's a God. Your song, How Can You Not? Is that what that's about?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it absolutely is. It's seeing God and all the things that he created, right? In all creation. It's also how can I not see God in my own story? How can I not see God in that as well?
That's Leanna Crawford with Keith Stevens from his podcast, I Love That Song. Go check it out wherever you get your podcasts. And maybe you've heard the expression, who really rescued who? That's kind of Carol Rogers' story. She followed God's call. She didn't know where he would lead, but like in all things, he led in a way she could have never imagined.
My name is Carol Rogers, and this journey all started years ago when I started to see people dumping their old dogs at the county pound. They were getting too expensive. They needed vet care. They weren't as much fun anymore. They just threw them away. It was heartbreaking, and I just wanted to do something. So in 2013, I started the Helping Paw Project. The whole idea was to find homes for these senior dogs, and we were going to help the adopter, the new owner, with major medical care. If that dog had an ear infection or had rotten teeth or heartworms, we were going to take care of that. And people weren't as afraid to adopt these dogs then. They didn't have this huge expense staring them in the face, so a lot of older dogs were getting homes. When I started it, I honestly didn't know if I was going to help 3 dogs or 300 dogs. I had no clue what I was doing, none. I didn't have any kind of a business plan. I didn't have any funding. I just knew I wanted to do something, and God has been with me every step of the way, every single step of the way. We've helped over 2,000 dogs now. We spend $10,000 to $15,000 every month on major medical care, and I know I'm doing what God wants me to do. These dogs are truly gifts from God. We could learn so much from our dogs. Maybe that's why he brought Pippin into my life, to show me what unconditional love really looks like. Maybe to be an example, to teach me patience, gratitude, forgiveness, qualities my dog has, I don't. There are times I pray, God, please make me more like my dog. I remember Marlin, little min pin, had every reason to complain. He had chronic eye infections. He had a mouthful of rotten teeth. He wound up losing all of his teeth in both eyes, and that little dog never complained, not once. We could learn a lot from Marlin. Then there was Maggie. Her first owner was a single mom, working 2 jobs, raising kids. Maggie had nothing wrong, except she was overweight from a thyroid imbalance. She had a skin condition. She needed medicated baths. That lady's vet told her to just have her put to sleep because she was old. Well, the owner didn't do that. She called us instead. And on Good Friday of 2016, that precious, funny beagle went into the most wonderful forever home. We made sure that a dog named Little Bit got surgery. She had this huge softball-sized mass hanging from her back leg. She could hardly walk. There was a dog named Marigold at a county pound. She had heartworms. There was a really great family that wanted her, but I have no idea if they would have adopted her had we not stepped up and said, we'll take care of the cost of the heartworms. So over the years, what started out as a dog rescue, all of a sudden it became a dog ministry. God was directing this all along. He knew it wasn't just about the dogs. He knew it was about the people. I didn't have a clue. For every older dog we help, there's a person. There's a unique opportunity for me to be Jesus to the least of these. To that starving older dog, the owner, the adopter, I get that chance every day. 10 years ago, it felt overwhelming. There was just too much sadness, too much pain, too many people dumping their dogs. We saw horribly malnourished dogs infested with fleas, struggling with arthritis. Nobody seemed to care. And we could never, ever, ever do enough. But we could do something. God saw every single effort and he fine-tuned it. And little by little, he showed me a bigger picture of his world. It was a picture that replaced all of that evil and greed out there that we see on the news. He replaced it with these awesome people. People who help me, people who help our dogs, volunteers, transport drivers, vet care providers, donors, people who help in so many ways that I could never do. I'm still overwhelmed, but now it's with gratitude. You can't do enough, but I've just got that certain measure of peace, contentment, fulfillment. I know I'm doing what God wants me to do. I know he wants me to help these dogs. He puts them in my path. He puts the owners in my path. Sometimes people ask me, why would the Helping Paw Project help these humans? After all, it's their fault that the dogs that aren't getting good care. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I just figure if God plunked them down in my path, he's got a reason. I admit for a long time I did blame the humans. I blamed the owners. Never even gave a thought to what the owners were going through. I'd go out and I'd take pictures of these dogs. I'd meet these people, and for some reason, it just never dawned on me that the owner had struggles of their own. And it was starting to get harder and harder. So when you meet these people and say, well, Your dog's healthy now, so I'm sorry you don't have food to put on your table. I'm sorry they're going to shut off your electricity. I'm just going to walk away. I took care of your dog. I got to where I just couldn't do that. But through the grace of God, that could have been me. So who am I to judge? I've met the evicted man living in a garage, caring for his dying dog. I've met the lady who was diabetic, lost her adult son, lost her husband and her job in less than 3 years' time. That didn't mean she no longer cared for her dog, but it certainly meant that she was overwhelmed and depressed and she couldn't care for them properly. Even people who really love their dogs sometimes need help. Perhaps that's why God put me here. I don't know, but I know I'm doing what He wants me to do. Do I still slip into that knee-jerk reaction of judging people at times? Yeah, sure. I know I'm getting better, but it used to be so easy to judge that person. That's not my job. I think it's okay to judge the situation, but then I need to enter into it and show that person that someone cares. I need to show them I care about their dog. I care about them. I'm going to do whatever I can to help them. I kind of take a deep breath and I say, this morning I asked Jesus, show me who to help today and how. You must have been on His mind because He put you in my path. So let's do this to help your dog. Often I pray, Jesus, when they see me, let them see you, because otherwise everything I do is totally pointless. None of it's about me. I just want to glorify God in everything I do. I just want to do His will. Do I have doubts once in a while? Sure. I don't think Satan's real happy with what I do, so he throws stuff into my head. Be still and know that I am God is still hard for me. I've got to remind myself, God's plan is always better than mine.
That's the story of Carol Rogers. I'm Melony McKay, and we're just sharing about those wow God moments with and through God's creation, His animals. And as we wrap up today, I just want to give you a heads up that this next story is intense. We've heard about how animals can serve, how they show unconditional love. They're committed, they're loyal, but they can also be a trusted friend and a hero. This is Gina Copeland's story with Sheba.
Hi, my name is Gina Copeland. I'm really excited to be able to tell you about the first dog my husband and I ever had. We got her at a shelter. We were told she was 6 months old and took her to the vet and found out, no, that she is 6 weeks old and she's going to be a humongous dog. She was a German Shepherd mix, and to put it just in one word, she was kind of incorrigible. I ended up taking her to dog training because she was so horrible. Sheba was the first dog I ever took to dog training, and through that, I ended up becoming a dog trainer. And through her and our relationship and working together in dog training, she was able to do some pretty cool things. While she was a little cray-cray in her energy level and in her independent flair, she definitely taught me some things and showed me how God can use animals. At the time, my husband and I were working at a children's home. We were young. He was getting his master's degree, and so we were doing this job. It was a state-run home for kids that had been abused and neglected. A couple different things that happened there that were pretty interesting. The children's home would have some community service people come to help. They were getting state aid, and so they would come and do some community service. This was years ago, and this was in Missouri, actually. Today, I don't think this would necessarily happen, but we were all in the backyard and all the kids were out. There was 30 kids at this children's home. So all the kids were outside playing, running around. And we had gotten permission to bring Sheba to the children's home with us since we had her. So she sort of took on that role of a therapy dog without really having therapy dog certification. She was just, kind of looked at as the family dog for all 30 kids. And one day we were out there and they had these workers come, and the workers were working in the backyard, and there were more than one. I think there was 3 or 4 people there at the time. But for whatever reason, Sheba identified this one guy. She basically took her herding instinct and backed him against the wall, and she was just doing a semicircle around him. And we thought that was really weird because she had not done that to anybody else, and she was just intent on keeping him away from the kids. At first, the staff was a little annoyed because they thought, what's wrong with your dog? Why is she acting like this? But then I said, hey, she doesn't do this just because. This is not like her. So they pulled the guy aside, took him inside, and then did even some more deeper background checking. Again, this was 30 years ago, but found out that he was a child predator and he had some things on his record to prove that. So whatever it was, God used her and helped her to know that this was not a good guy. Another thing that happened at the children's home, which was really amazing, normally at the children's home, they only accepted kids that were school-age kids. We ended up having 2 sisters that came in. All of their older siblings, this has gone on for years and years, had come through the system because their mom had issues and she oftentimes had relationships with men that were not good people. So we had Dottie and her older sister. Her older sister was 10. The state really wanted to prosecute the mother's current boyfriend. The 10-year-old had shared some things that had happened to her, and so they had that to go on, but they had nothing to go on for Dottie. And Dottie was only 5 at the time. So one day, all the other kids went to school, and Dottie stayed with us. For a little bit, I got busy doing something, and I was like, wow, where's Dottie at? I wonder where she's at. I went back into the bedrooms area. There was a hallway with all the bedrooms, and I saw that she was in her bedroom. She was talking to Sheba. And what was so interesting is that prior, therapists had tried multiple ways of getting Dottie to share about what had happened to her. They tried play therapy, giving her dolls to hopefully reenact maybe some things that had happened. None of that worked. They tried to get her to talk and she just wouldn't. And when I went back to her bedroom, I saw that Dottie was sitting on the ground and she had Sheba in her lap. Dottie was telling Sheba all the horrible things that had happened to her. I immediately went and I rushed and I got one of our therapists and I said, you need to bring your tape recorder now. And so she did, and we ran back to the bedroom and we were outside the door. Dottie had no idea that we were there, but they were able to tape everything that Dottie was telling Sheba. And sadly, they did some testing on Dottie to verify what had happened. So they were able to prosecute. The sad thing for Dottie, I think things are better now, but at that time, they just made a determination that even at 5 years old, she was already kind of too far gone, that she was just going to have to be institutionalized. My husband and I so wanted to foster her and maybe even adopt her if possible. She was just the sweetest, cutest little thing. And to this day, on occasion, I pray for Dottie. She's a grown woman now, and just pray that she's in a good place and doing some good things in her life. But I feel like God has used my animals, and in particularly, he used Sheba, because everything that I try and get involved in, I always tell the Lord, God, you're here too. Whether I'm teaching a dog class, whether I'm working at a children's home, whatever I'm doing, you are here too. Please use me. And if you can and want to, please use my dog as well. That's the story of Sheba and her wow moments through God.
You are here, God, in these moments, these stories, these wow God stories that we heard, and in the stories that you have yet to write. We're grateful for your creation and how you continue to move through it. In Genesis 1:24, it says, God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. To be clear, when we say wow God, we're talking about the one true living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and animals. He is the one who makes our hearts say,
wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God.
My wow God story.
I wanted to share a wow God moment.
That's my wow God story. Praise God.
And I'm so thankful to God for this wow God moment.
So, thank you, God.
You've been listening to Wow God Stories, a Wow God production. a ministry of the University of Northwestern St. Paul. Discover more at wowgod.com.